In your story, first off, or pretty early on, you need to establish the tone or the genre of the film. Is this a comedy? Is this a fantasy? Is it a spoof film? Is it political satire? Is it drama, thriller? What is it, right? So we want to know that. You're going to write, as you begin writing here, you have the 5 key elements that you need to illustrate when you're in your first few pages, and you want to make sure that you're kind of diving into the meat of it, especially in a short film, pretty quick. Okay? Introduce your main character, interesting flaws, if anybody, if they're not likable, and at least create something or somebody that's a little bit we can have empathy towards, like we just talked about that. Somebody we can hope for and root for and fear for. If we don't like your main character and we can't root for them, we're probably not going to stay engaged in your film. Okay? Clarify the world that the story is, right? What's the status quo? What is this world about? If you are writing Harry Potter and it's the first film, there's a lot you have to explain about how this world works, right? But if you're just writing a film that takes place in modern day society, everybody's going to kind of get what the world's like and what the status quo is. So it depends, right? Indicate the theme or the message of the film. Is this good versus evil? Is this, is love worth fighting for? Like, what's the theme of your storyline? What's that underlying theme of the story? Set up the dramatic situation. This is what your story is going to be about. Okay, so that's something to establish pretty quickly in your film. This is saying, I just said in the first few pages. In a short film, you might only have about a page and a half to kind of get all this dialed in, right? And then use a timeline to increase tension when possible. So what does that mean? So you'll notice it in films a lot. Michael Bay uses it in his action films all the time. Setting a timeline, like, the serial killer says they're going to kill again in 24 hours. Okay, so they have 24 hours to solve that. The test is in 3 days, and I got to get ready for that test. If I don't pass it, I'm going to lose my job. Okay, 3 days is the timeline. The asteroid is going to hit the Earth in 10 days, and we have to figure out how to save the Earth. Okay, the timeline is 10 days. The timer on the bomb says 30 seconds. Okay, then you have 30 seconds to solve that problem. Okay, so there can be a bunch of timelines set in the movie. Like, it doesn't have to just be one. But using timelines will increase tension and add a little bit of intensity to what's going on every single time if it's done right. Okay, so think about how you can add timelines to kind of create that tension in your story. Okay, so now we're moving to kind of the structure of it, right? So this is going to be pretty detailed information about the structure of how you should kind of follow and the ebbs and flows of a storyline, right? So first off, we're talking about the 3-act structure, right? So this is a model used for screenwriters to kind of divide up the fictional narrative into 3 major parts, okay? It's often called the setup, the confrontation, and the resolution. So here in the first act, it usually starts off with a lot of exposition, which is all the backstory and filling in that what this character is about and how they got to where they are or where they're going, kind of thing. It definitely establishes the main character and their relationships to the world and all the people around them. And it's often done within the first few minutes of a film, and this is called the establishing unit, right? And so that's very early on in the film. And then next up, this is what we're talking about, right? So establishing unit, what are we talking about? Again, it's the characters, who the protagonist is, who the antagonist might be, what the location of the movie is, where it's taking place, and again, trying to set up kind of what this film might be about or where it could be headed. The tone and the genre, again, you can establish whether this is going to be a comedy or a thriller or a drama just by the tone of the film early on and how the music's playing, what kind of shots you're using, the lighting that's going into it, all that good stuff, okay? And now we're past that establishing few minutes and that establishing unit. Within that first 15 minutes, you're going to set up this thing that's going to happen that's going to drive the rest of the movie. And that's called the inciting incident. Okay, the inciting incident is the thing that's going to happen that's going to decide the direction of this film. So like in the movie Toy Story, when Woody the little boy, I forget his name, is his mom says, hey, we're going to Pizza Planet for dinner tonight, and you can bring one toy. And Buzz is Buzz is just hanging out doing something. I can't remember what he's doing, but Woody hears this and he knows he's going to pick Buzz as the toy he's going to take to Pizza Palace or whatever the place is, Pizza Planet. And his objective is to then knock Woody behind the desk so that he can't be found, and he'll grab Woody and run off to the car and head to the restaurant, right? And so, but instead of knocking Buzz behind the desk, he knocks Buzz out the window, which is the inciting incident, which is the thing that drives the rest of the story. The rest of the story is about getting Buzz back in the house with the rest of the toys. So that moment in the story, that again is going to drive the rest of the story, and that usually happens 15 minutes in or so, and it's the catalyst for your whole story, okay? Later in the first act, there's usually a dynamic on-screen incident that occurs in front or confronts the main character, right? This is the protagonist, and this little thing right here that happens is called the first act curtain, okay? It's usually a turning point for the protagonist, and again, it signals the end of the first act. It ensures life will never be the same again for this protagonist, and raises a dramatic question that will be answered in the climax of the film, okay? So you have this inciting incident, which is what drives the rest of the story, right? And then just as we're ending that first act curtain, there's going to be this dramatic thing that's going to change that protagonist forever. Again, life won't be the same. There's going to be a video later on the Story Elements video page that will be from Star Wars, and it's a moment early on in Star Wars. This is the first act curtain for Luke Skywalker in the original Star Wars, A New Hope. Okay, so check that one out and watch that. So that first act curtain, okay, it's known as a plot point, and in an event, it's an event that thrusts the plot into a new direction. Okay, so you'll see that in Star Wars, that one moment. Okay, there is an inciting incident that happens a little earlier in Star Wars, and then this is that first act curtain. Usually, it's a major twist that drastically challenges the main character's life. Again, which kind of drives them to do what they're going to do, right? Sends them off in that direction after they've faced that other challenge, and life will never be the same again, which for Luke Skywalker, you'll see that moment. And again, if you're not a Star Wars fan, it's hard to relate. There's a lot of clips from different films, and if you haven't seen the films, it might be hard to kind of understand kind of where these plot points fit into those stories, but hopefully most of the moments you'll kind of understand, okay, I could see where in whatever story this is about, that being a moment that would do this in the film kind of thing, okay? So now we have the first act covered. We got the establishing unit, we got an inciting incident, and we got the first act curtain, okay? And now we're moving on to act 2. Okay, and this is all about confrontations, right? So this is usually where we're facing all the obstacles and hurdles that the character is going to face to reach that goal, whatever it is that thing is that they're trying to attain. We're gonna run into all the obstacles, and typically there's going to be like, they're going to get increasingly challenging, right? There's going to be one that's not such a big deal, and then there's going to face another one that might be even more dramatic and more like, okay, how are they getting out of this one? And that's typically what's going to be happening. The second act also refers to the rising actions, typically depicts the protagonist attempting to resolve the problem initiated by that first turning point, only to find himself in even a worse situation, right? That's always something that you look for as the second act progresses. Part of the reason protagonists seem unable to resolve their problem is because they do not yet have the skills to deal with the force of the antagonism, right? So that's often something you'll find in kind of the true hero's journey, which is what you would find in like a Star Wars film, right? They must not only learn some new skills, but arrive at a higher sense of awareness to kind of solve or be able to be capable enough to face the challenges, right? In that second act, there's going to be something that defines kind of the midpoint of the and we're going to move to that, right? So in this mid section of the second act, we have what's called that midpoint, and this is the point where there appears to be a 180-degree reverse of fortune. This is typically a false victory or a false defeat, like something that you feel like, oh, this movie's over, there's no way to overcome this particular thing, right? Our main character appears to be at a low point, oftentimes. And again, it's a 180-degree reversal of fortune that we're not quite sure how this character is going to handle, right? So you're looking for that in the midpoint of the film when you're watching it, right? So as we watch our film, A Quiet Place, you're going to be looking for all these moments in the project, okay, or in the storyline. That's what we're going to be doing. So just have an understanding of that, okay? So again, we have this establishing unit. We have an inciting incident. We have that first act curtain. We have some of the hurdles and obstacles that we're going to face in Act 2. And then we have this midpoint, which is this reversal of fortune. How are we going to get out of this moment? And you're going to be looking for those moments in A Quiet Place, right? Figuring out how to break this story down and get us to the point where we can recognize all this good stuff, okay? And then you have the second act curtain, okay? So the second act curtain comes at it's a turning point. It's the turning point of the second act, which is a signal that the end of the second act is coming to an end. It seems to be an absolute lowest point for the protagonist, so even lower than the midpoint, right? We've sunk even farther. This is going to be something that you're like, okay, there's no way that we can get out of this, okay? So in Toy Story, and I always reference Toy Story for a couple reasons. Number one, it follows the 3-act structure perfectly to the page count. And also, most people have seen it, right? A lot of people have seen it, even if it's been a while. In Toy Story, the second act curtain is going to be the moment when Buzz and Woody are riding on the RC car, and they're right behind the moving truck. Like, they're just about there, and all the toys on the truck are trying to get the RC car back with the remote control, but the RC car is running low on battery. And you're like, oh man, this truck is taking off. This RC car is dying. There is no way out of this. But then Woody remembers that Buzz has a rocket strapped to his back from the kid Sid that destroys toys and stuff. And so he never launched him into space. So he's got this rocket. And Sid put a little match in Woody's pocket or holster or something. I can't remember. And he's like, oh, this is how I'm going to do it. So he takes the match, lights the rocket, and then they take off and fly into the back of the truck. And they find their way out of that dilemma. Okay, but at that second act curtain, that moment looked like there's no way out of this. They're lost forever. This truck is taking off, and they're never going to get back to their home and their friends and their owner kind of thing again. And that's how they solve that problem. So that's what the second act curtain is, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that moment in A Quiet Place where there's no way out of this. There's nothing that can be done that can help solve this. Okay. The third act features the resolution of the story and all the subplots, right? In a short film, you're not really going to have a lot of subplots, a lot of little side stories. You'll just have your main focus, right? But in a feature film, there's going to be some subplots. This is the climax, the climax is the scene of the sequence, right? So this is where we're talking about third act. This is where the resolution happens, right? And then we're going to have this thing called the climax. Okay, the climax is the scene or sequence in which the main tension of the story is brought to the most intense moment and the dramatic questions are answered, leaving the protagonist and the other characters with a new sense of who they really are. That's the climax. It's coming near the end of the third act, and we're going to see what they're made of kind of thing in this particular moment in the story. Okay? And this is the end of our resolution. The third act conflict is settled. Characters are complete. All the subplots get resolved, and the audience sees this new status quo or what their future holds for the character potentially, right? And again, a lot of this structure that we just went through kind of tends to follow kind of a traditional hero's journey. There are other types of stories, right? Like character study stories where it isn't really hero driven, where I have this goal and I'm going to kind of try to solve this thing. We're just really trying to learn and understand about people and the psychology of people. Again, it's just a different type of film. This is following what we would call a hero's journey. That's what this structure is looking at right here. Okay. So that's all the pieces. Again, you're going to be watching A Quiet Place, and you're going to be looking for an establishing unit. You're going to try to pick out the inciting incident and be able to describe it and explain it. You're looking for the first act curtain and describe what that moment is and how it changes the story. You're going to be looking for obstacles in the storyline, right? When they start facing these obstacles, and you're looking for that midpoint, that whole reversal of fortune moment in about the middle of the film. And then you're looking for the Act 2 curtain, which is that lowest point for our main character, our protagonist. Okay? And your view of who the protagonist might be could also change, right? You have to watch the film and kind of see who the story is being told by, or whose point of view we're watching this film through play out. Okay, that becomes important. And in A Quiet Place, you might think you're watching the protagonist, and then it may turn out to be someone else. So pay attention to that and kind of try to figure out whose story is being told right now. Okay, and then we're going to get to that Act 2 curtain, and then we're going to find that's going to start the resolution of the story, and we're looking for that climactic moment where they have resolved resolve that issue that they're dealing with, and we feel like there's a new status quo and they've grown as a person, and we kind of get a glimpse as to what the future might be for these people, right? Or this person. So those are the moments that you're looking for. There's going to be a form that you're going to be filling out that you're going to have to in detail describe these moments in A Quiet Place. So it's not just watching it for entertainment. You're trying to learn how to break down a story and break it all down. So let's make sure we get that done. Okay? So let's have a good class. And if you got any questions, please reach out to me. I want to be a resource to you. We can address some questions when we get back to class, but I'm hoping that all of this gets turned in and you kind of understand what's going on. You'll have access to this PowerPoint as well. So if you want to reach back, look back at it and kind of find what the different definitions are of each moment and each piece of the film, you can do that. So take care, enjoy the film, have fun, and then we'll see you all next week in class.